Hello and welcome to Access Chat. I'm delighted to welcome Senoglu and Nancy Doyle. Nancy's a repeat guest to Access Chat. We're here to talk about something that's close to my heart and close to Nancy's and Naz's too, which is the Blooming Genius Foundation, which is an offshoot or an idea that has come from Genius Within. So it's really exciting. It's something that I'm not best placed to talk about, which is why Naz and Nancy are here. And in fact, Naz is probably best placed of all. But so over to you, Naz and Nancy, if you'd like to explain a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and what is Blooming Genius.
Of course. Shall I go ahead?
Please do.
Yes. So, well, Blooming Genius actually seeded itself years ago. A good friend of Nancy's set up a kind of initiative, mostly on Twitter, and for certain reasons it didn't bloom into what Blooming Genius is trying to be now. So it remained stagnant for a while, and then we managed to pick it back up a few months ago. We started talking about it. Nancy introduced the idea. Whitney Isles, who is non-executive director also, and Justin LaHood, and we had a chat about it, and we thought, you know what, let's try it. We've got some funding, we've got a lot of passion. I was invited onto it, which I have a lot of passion, so we thought let's have a go. So we're still in the initial phases of setting it up. We are running a survey at the moment, sort of doing like a listening exercise to understand what the community needs. So we're very new, but we're excited to kind of pick up where it was left off, and take it somewhere that we can't predict right now, but we know we're going to support young neurodiverse and neurodivergent children and young adults throughout school, general life as well, and college, etc. So that is Blooming Genius. So
to expand upon that a little bit for our audience, Genius Within is the parent, and it's a community interest company. So the profits, or a large part of the profits of the organization, get plowed back into doing community work, and Blooming Genius is essentially that element of community work. So, and the idea is to support neurodivergent, neurominority kids in particular. So Nancy
and their families,
and of course, yeah, the
because you know, and I know this is sometimes this can be a bit of a thing in the neurodiversity community, you know, centering the parents' needs above a disabled child's is obviously not ideal, but I feel very strongly that you can't support children without supporting their immediate family circle, and so sometimes that's where the support needs to go, because there is very little support for families, and yeah, I learned that having twins. So when I had twins and they were 3 months old and I hadn't had more than 2 hours sleep in one go for 3 months, I learned very quickly that a child's most important resource is its parent. And if that parent is not functional, then that child is at risk. End of. So yeah, a strategy was formed, and said parent got some sleep, and said parent became a much better parent as a result.
And so just to sort of dig a little bit deeper, Naz, what really sort of triggered your interest in engaging with the initiative? What brought you in to obviously you've been working with Whitney Isles, and Whitney has been working in the trauma and justice space, I know, from working with her a little bit. So what attracted you to working in the space supporting neurodivergent kids and their families?
So I've always wanted to, and that's the thing, Whitney was kind of my catalyst into it. She was my way in, but I had been trying for years to get into somehow working with children, or in schools, or even behind the scenes, because I grew up seeing so many of my friends and close family members struggle so much, and they still are. I won't go into too much detail, but a cousin of mine who is my age, 23, grew up from what they used to name as Asperger's syndrome, or currently we call it autistic spectrum condition, and he had such a difficult time growing up and not enough support, and that is chasing up with him now. And that, seeing someone who I love so much go through so much stress and struggle, and his parents as well, and it's still ongoing, you know, he's still not where he could have been if he had that support, and that really has kind of fueled me for life. You know, I am angry, I am passionate, and I really care, and I think that's why I'm here. I haven't studied, I haven't got any professional background or previous experience in this kind of world. I came, you know, I was a personal assistant at a lot of corporate companies for years. I haven't got the experience, but I have the passion, and I think that's why I'm here now, and I'm kind of behind Blooming Genius, because I think Genius Within is so established, they're helping people in the workplace, but to get to the workplace, you need to have that support at school, and I think that's really important. So that's what's brought me to the team.
I can we back up just a little bit, because I love the conversation, but many of us, I think, in the United States are not going to be able to follow this. And so I think what we should do, if everybody doesn't mind, is maybe have Nancy talk a little bit about Genius Within, reminding people, because Nancy's been on the show multiple times and we love her and we love the work, and how wonderful now to meet you, Naz. And I just want to make a quick comment. I have found that people that are executive assistants or administrative assistants are some of the most organized, smartest people in the world, and often entrepreneurs and CEOs, especially as women, will do some of those jobs early in our career. And you will be so successful just because you got everything you need. So I just want to say kudos to Nancy for seeing the genius within you. But I think it would be helpful for people if we could just step back and remind people who Nancy is and the amazing work she's done, both in the UK, in the US, and then Nancy can then pull it into, you know, what you're doing with the children, because I agree with so much you're saying, including I am neurodiverse myself, but I have a daughter that's neurodiverse. And when Nancy said, I needed help, I continue to need help. And now, you know, my husband has a brain issue. And so making sure the families know what to do and how to support it is so important. But if we do not prepare, you know, neurodiverse people for the workforce, society loses. And we continue to do that. So I was just wondering, for us Americans, if maybe you couldn't wrap your hands around a little bit more, because I think y'all know a lot about this in the UK, but we need to have y'all over in the States doing this as well, if you don't mind.
By the way, Deborah, Genius Within is working more and more in the States.
I know. That's why I want to make sure people know what we're sort of, where we're placing the conversation, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so Genius Within's trajectory, 10 years, social enterprise, as Neil said. In the UK, we have a legal structure that means that we sit between a charity and a limited company, or so we are not a charity. We charge for our services. We're not doing things that don't have value, and so we expect either the taxpayer or corporations to pay us for our work. But equally, we are not trying to profit on disability. So we're sitting somewhere in between that, and 65% of our net distributable profits each year gets reinvested in our community and services for our community. So we've been doing that kind of unofficially for the last 10 years. And we did invest, as Naz explained, in a colleague of ours who explored the idea of working with children using Genius Within's models for coaching, workshop, assessments, you know, delivering services to support neurominorities to discover their genius within, to find their potential, to come into their fulfillment. And so she explored, you know, how could we do this with kids? Could we do it with kids? And we funded her to do that for a while. And there were lots of ideas that were floating around, but it just didn't seem like the right time, and it didn't seem like the right approach to have that be a professional services. And so there's something for me that's really powerful about Naz's lived experience, you know, her own experience of having a neurodiverse profile, her experience of having people close to her in her family who are, you know, need more support in order to be at their best. And for that kind of very authentic experience to co-produce a service that is both of the community and for the community. And so with the maturation of Genius Within, our 10-year anniversary, we decided, right, net profits each year, we can have a certain amount of money that we give every year to services for young neurominority people. I'm not going to do it. I'm a work psychologist. My training is IO, industrial, organizational, occupational psychology. I'm a psychologist that is trained to work in the workplace. And I believe really strongly that we shouldn't practice outside our competence. If you're a workplace specialist, you should practice in the workplace. If you're an education specialist, you practice in education. If you're a clinician, you practice in healthcare settings. And if you're going to come out of your specialism, you need to get the right training and competence to practice. But also personally, I don't want to do it. And to be perfectly honest with you guys, I am, as you know, a neurodiverse woman. I'm ADHD, and I am still personally traumatized by my experiences in high school. I found high school incredibly traumatic. I didn't go. I did actually receive a clinical diagnosis of school phobia when I was 14, which I thought was great because that meant I didn't have to go anymore. And I didn't go anymore. I still managed to pass my exams. I still managed to, I had a big wobble, but I did manage to get to university eventually and kind of, create a career for myself. But I'm really aware that with the level of truancy that I experienced from about 11 onwards, if I was in a very big, large inner city school with lots of different kids in it. And I had two parents with degrees and white skin. And I'm just really, really aware that there, but for the grace of God, go I. Do you know what I mean? If there was anything different about my demographic, instead of having a school phobia diagnosis and being allowed to work home and do it in my own spare time, I would have been in a pupil referral unit, a special school. My parents would have been prosecuted for truancy. There was a trajectory that I was going to be on with this brain in a different body and a different family. I would be on a different trajectory. So I feel very personally triggered to support kids, but I also feel that it makes me too angry. I just want to go and be mean to the teachers that are being mean and tell them all how mean they are and be rude and swear a lot. And it's not an appropriate thing to do. So I can't do it. So someone else has got to do it. So so having the Blooming Genius led by Naz, who is a young woman herself, who is closer in age to the people that we need to support, and to have Naz supported by those of us who have professional experience and experience of parenting is I think the perfect example of co-production. It's keeping keeping engagement from all of the stakeholders whose views need to be included. But where we're at right now, and what Naz will tell you about, I think in a minute, is we need to know what services are required. So we don't have a fixed idea right now, do we, Naz, about what's required? We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to come in over the top and say, you community, you need these things. So yeah, so Naz, do you want to say what we're doing and why we're doing it?
Yes, exactly. So we obviously are aware, we know that children are unsupported at school. We know that there are gaps to fill. We know that local authorities can't fund those gaps and fill them, but we want to understand the specifics and how that crosses over between, at the moment, the UK and different regions. So even within London, there will be different areas that receive more support or less support, or certain demographics, certain people that aren't receiving the kind of support that they'd benefit from. And again, with the actual support, what is it? Is it that kids need, I don't know, some assistive technology or a laptop? Or do the teachers at that school need some coaching to understand how behavior works? And I think that's a one thing that we'll definitely focus on regardless of our learning exercise. But teachers need to understand, and Senkos, they need to, that special educational needs coordinators and people that work with special educational needs children need to understand how behavior is impacted by being neurodiverse, and how there's easy adjustments to go about that, just changing your language or doing, something slightly different, or understanding that you don't have to make eye contact to be listening. Small things like that is where we really think that could, that we could give some support to help schools understand that, for example. And that's one thing, but the rest of what we need to understand is all specific, and it's every mother every mother or father to a neurodiverse child, they all have different experiences, and we'd like to hear as much as we can. So we are really extending our call to ask people to fill out these surveys and to really understand the needs, because even if we had that survey running for 5 years, there would be different responses. And we'd like to understand as much as we can before we begin delivering services. We don't want to, you know, as Nancy said, reinvent the wheel and start saying, oh, we'll help you do this, when that's actually not what's going to benefit those children and young people. And again, we say children and young people under 21 is our kind of age bracket, but below 21 it could go to 1 year old. You know, there's no kind of limit on the younger side, because early help is obviously essential for these children, and we really need to get in there before the schools begin to traumatize them, essentially. So that is, yeah, I think where we're going with understanding the needs of the community.
Yeah, this is a very much community-led exercise for us. You know, Genius Within does its work in supporting government services and supporting businesses. And I think I'm just always really aware that the adults we work with needed the support that we offer when they were 7, 6, 10. You know, I mean, if you can get in there first, then Genius Within works in prisons, for example. We work in prisons with people who have really competent abilities in visual spatial reasoning, building things, and they leave school with no qualifications and they think that they have no value. And that psychological damage of thinking that you have no value because you're not good at literacy, because you can't sit still and concentrate in an exam hall, is such a waste of human potential. And so I think, yeah, that the idea is to instill a bit of hope as well for kids and for their parents. Because if the parents are struggling to have that kind of hope and belief that their children's future can be somewhere that they're, you know, a positive, happy experience for their child, then those parents are going to be really depleted.
Families, teachers have been overwhelmed over the last couple of months. Now everyone is asking them to do things, to learn things fast. Teachers are basically almost forced to go out there and learn things by themselves. How do you propose to engage with parents and with teachers, knowing that they are already overwhelmed with so many things that they need to learn? What's your plan to succeed here?
I think the way that we'd approach that is a kind of hands-on, in-person kind of interaction with them. So one of the people on our team, Paul Stevenson, he has Tourette syndrome, and he has always wanted to try and speak. Obviously, not many people understand how Tourette syndrome works, and you know, teachers as well. For example, a child in class has ticked and said something, the teacher's most likely to just throw them out. So he would want to, his plan in the future is to go to a school, actually speak with the teachers and with the children together. And I think that would be the different approach to it that would actually work, because you'd be working together in one space rather than being on Zoom or being in a conference hall with a screen and telling, you know, showing them a sign on a wall and saying, this is how it works. I think it actually needs to be a lot more interactive. And I think that the most important thing to helping the teachers is to actually speak with the children as well, and let the children be more involved in their assessments, and and kind of raise the child's awareness of themselves. Because if a child, you know, if the teacher understands, that's cool, but the child also needs to understand so they can work together. And once everyone's on the same page, that's the way I believe that these things, you know, this will move forward, and Blooming Genius will achieve success in the school setting, in the educational setting, because everyone will be on the same page. And I think instead of just telling teachers, hi, we're here to help you, this is what you're going to do, I think they need to understand that it's not just them, and the work can be kind of split across the families, the children, and themselves.
I think that's a lovely comment, Naz. And I think one of the when we looked at this before, we did a lot of teacher training and a lot of awareness training for schools and for teachers. And Antonio's right. You know, people are overloaded. They're their brain space is kind of full of all the things they've got to do. But one of the things about working with the children live and doing things there with the kids and the teachers in the same space is about demystifying how easy it is to be inclusive in the way that you organize without it having to be this massive additional extra burden. You know, I've got, do you mind if I just tell two very quick anecdotes? Okay, so two in British schools, these are two friends of mine with both of whom have autistic kids in British schools. School one, the Senko calls the parent in to discuss the fact that 14-year-old child cannot read and cannot write. His handwriting is appalling, and the Senko wants to know what the mother is going to do about that. In the meeting, also objecting to the fact that the child keeps taking his tie off. So British children have to wear uniforms and ties. And said autistic child has a verbal reasoning IQ of 120, or 120 plus, top 5% of the population, and has motor control difficulties in the bottom 5% of the population. So really kind of diverse range of their ability. And so, of course, handwriting is going to be difficult. And of course, with sensory issues like that as well, wearing a tie is going to feel constricted. And so the Senko was kind of really wrestling to get this kid to practice more handwriting, age 14, and really wrestling to get this kid to have to wear a tie. And I just said to her, there are no workplaces where this would happen. So, in workplaces, we would give that kid technology. He would have speech to text software. He'd have a scribe pen. He'd have an iPad. He wouldn't be requiring to handwrite. And there are no workplaces where you could make someone wear a tie at all. That just wouldn't happen. It makes him uncomfortable. He feels, can we not have him concentrating on what he's there to do, which is, engaging in the literature? And her view was, what happens if he gets to play by a rule that all the other children don't, and so we're battling the attitude. So that's story one. And then story two is another friend of mine in a different part of England with an autistic child. And the Senko calls my friend up and says, we've noticed that, let's call the child Jack, we've noticed that Jack has a real difficulty engaging with the curriculum on Wednesday afternoons and Wednesday mornings. Not refusing to join in, not digging heels in, but having a difficult time engaging with the curriculum, which is the priority, right? Engaging with the learning. So what we've thought is we do team sports on Wednesdays. And what we think is the anxiety of team sports is overwhelming Jack, and that's why Jack can't join in. And so what we're wondering is it all right with you if Jack doesn't do team sports? Because what we were thinking is, while we're in the sports hall, we could just give Jack like a dancer size video or, a little exercise video, and they could just do their own thing while we all play dodgeball or whatever it is they're going to play. And my friend's like, that's a great idea. Have you asked Jack? Oh, no, we haven't asked Jack yet. You're absolutely right. Why don't we ask Jack first? I'm sure Jack will be all right with that, but we'll call you back if there's any problem. So none of the things that we're asking for in this example, none of the adjustments, none of the accommodations cost a lot of money. These are all fairly easy things to do. Yes, you can say, don't wear a tie. And that just takes out a layer of discomfort and need. Yes, you can say, don't join in with sports. We'll just watch that little video in the corner. Doesn't require extra personnel, doesn't require cost. I mean, a bit of assistive technology might require a bit of cost, but it's minimal. And so actually this idea that the reason educators aren't able to support children because they're so stressed and underfunded and underpaid, I just think it's nonsense. I think it's kindness. And I think if we have these experiences where we're just showing how easy it is to just be kind and allow rules to be flexible as opposed to insisting that education equals compliance, then we could take out such a massive layer of need in the special educational needs system that we'd have that pot of funding left for the kids who really need it. Because there are kids who need one-to-one, there are kids who need that stuff, there are kids who are going to need to be shown how to do more basic things like cooking and boiling kettles and making beverages. So if we know we need that money for those kids, but the kids who could be doing absolutely fine if they just were allowed to not wear a tie and didn't spend their entire time battling their teachers because they want to wear sunglasses because gaslighting, make them feel overwhelmed. If we could take those kids out of the system for needing expensive diagnoses, 6 professionals to validate that the thing they're asking for is a real thing and they haven't just made it up. If we could just trust children to tell us what they need, and then we would just live, we would free up all of these resources. Yes, I'm done with my rant, Neil.
Good, excellent. Well, not good, but anyway. A couple of things. Having spent a long time in the further education sector provision of assistive tech, it's clear to me that you have to have a certain level of privilege to even get through the education, to get to the point where suddenly there's provision available, which seems nuts. So I'm really pleased to see you aiming at much earlier ages, and then secondly, I think I'm really interested in this sort of idea that we've discussed, and not on here yet, but we've discussed about the fact that there is no accountability for schools to really provide this stuff, because of the structure in the UK where it's very difficult for parents of neurodivergent kids to be able to really hold stuff to account, because is it the Board of Governors, is it the Education Authority, is it the teacher? That kind of thing allows people to fall between the gaps. So I know you're asking a couple of questionnaires, Naz. Is this something that you're seeking out, the opinions of the parents and the individuals in your questionnaires about where they're going for help and whether or not they know how to hold people accountable? Because it seems to me that it's really easy for people to shirk their responsibility.
Exactly, and we are asking those questions, but the feedback we've had so far is that the parents actually want the surveys at the moment. The question is they are anonymous, so you don't leave your name, you don't leave an email address, nothing. Sure. We've had people coming back to us saying, can we leave our details with you? We want to speak more. So what we're planning to do eventually, pretty soon hopefully, is to hold some focus groups with these parents and invite them when they're available, maybe in the evenings, to a Zoom call to just discuss these points and to see what comes up in those sessions, so we can get an actual understanding with some girth to it, rather than do you agree, yes or no, tick a box in the questionnaire. So that's how we're aiming to truly understand their needs and how they what is frustrating them and how we can help their children, because the question is going to give us the main kind of information we need, but we need details, and we need to really understand what is causing them stresses every day. And if a parent is stressed out and exhausted by the system, and the local authority isn't doing anything, how are they meant to support their child efficiently? So that's the goal, to really speak with them and to do a lot of research and to kind of take it slow, and to invite them to some focus groups, just some sessions, maybe an hour or two in the evenings, to have a discussion with them and let them actually have a one-to-one with us.
Evenings or early mornings. I know a lot of parents with kids who have special educational needs who actually the evening is the worst time, because they've got kids who find bedtime really, really difficult, and then they finally get their kids to sleep at midnight, and then the kids sleep hopefully through till 8-9 o'clock. And I know a lot of special ed parents who get their best work done at 6 a.m. Yeah.
I will also say that, because I know that we're saying this, but something for everyone to remember, because I was one of those children that could never sit down. To this day, I dread being on a long airplane ride, because I can't sit still. I can't, yes, grandmother, I do have ants in my pants, but I mean, I just cannot. It's not how I'm made. But what I love about what you are doing and the work that the way you're listening to the individuals, to the teachers, to the parents, all of everybody, right? The individual. If we don't step in to help the children now, then the children will be damaged, as we have been damaged, as Neil was damaged. And, you know, I mean, we all have grown up to be great adults. We figured it out, but we bought into what we were being told that we were, and I won't speak for y'all, but I bought into it. Why was I the only kid in the room that if the teacher said one more person says one thing and I start laughing? I mean, I just, but I knew that I knew I was curious and innovative, but at the same time, I was pretty much told to just shut up and stop acting like a clown. So my self-esteem was attacked. Now, I believe it's made me a much more empathetic person, but I just want to point out to everyone that the reality is, if we don't do this, if NAS's efforts are not really successful, then the society loses. Because if we're not making sure that we're telling people when they're little people too, when they're little kids, that you're not broken. This is an amazing way your brain works. So your brain doesn't work like Jimmy's brain or Susie's brain. It works like your brain. So I think rethinking it all, this is the time to do it. And so it's got to be done. And we have to join. We have to help as a community, because otherwise we are damaging human beings that we then have to undamage when they go into the workforce. Who cares if this little boy wears a tie? I remember my son has been in the field, and he was a preschool teacher for little babies with autism and stuff. They were so cute. And there was one little boy that did not like his hat, but his mother wanted him to wear the hat. So he would take his hat off. And so the mother came to my son one day and she said, "Who took his hat off? Was it the bus driver?" And my son just could not understand why this mother was so hell-bent on having this little boy wear the hat. He didn't want to wear the hat, but it's like, it's so complicated. That's the point I'm making. So we really need to get in and start understanding what's happening and helping all these people and these teachers, because the reality is, otherwise we're damaging these human beings, and they're hopefully going to find their potential, but it's going to take a lot longer. So just wanted to.
Businesses can help by making donations to the Blooming Genius Foundation. Genius Within will be contributing, but we'll also be talking to all our corporate partners who are currently doing their actual level best to find ways to be neuro-inclusive. And wouldn't it be so much easier to be neuro-inclusive if you had those specialist diverse brains without the trauma?
Yeah, well said. Naz, do you want the last word?
I'm not sure what to say as the last word.
I mean, yeah, okay. So let's thank our sponsors, our friends,
and make sure that people know your website, your social media, Naz.
Yeah. So who should people be following on Twitter?
So on Twitter, we are at blooming_genius. On Instagram, we are at blooming genius. No underscores involved. And yeah, I'm at Naz Senoglu on Twitter. I don't tweet that much. I'm not the best at that, but I am running the Blooming Genius account, and we will be posting a lot more on social media in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, that's where you can find us.
Excellent. So just remains for me to say thank you to MyClearText for helping us with the captions, and to Barclays Access and Microlink for continuing to support us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for having us.
Thank
you.